Tracy.
Tom says we'll get started in just a couple minutes. So everybody in the front row has to stay awake. Yeah, one of you. Mm-hmm.
Thanks everybody for coming tonight. Great turnout. I'm Tom Richards. I work as a part-timer at the library helping with information services, but I also serve on the Friends of the Library board. They help to provide for things that aren't within the library budget. I'll talk to you about that a little bit. But tonight, our speaker is Eileen Mikus, registered dietitian and nurse, and she has a program for us tonight to tell us how consideration of our nutrition can have a big impact on our health going forward. And I think it's something that all of us want to learn more about, because that's why we're here. Eileen, please get us started.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
If anyone can't hear, if anyone needs any help hearing, we can turn the volume up a little bit, but we're trying out with the microphone.
Hopefully you can hear me. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you again for coming. I'm so excited to see all these people interested in nutrition, because I've been interested in it for quite a few decades. Tonight we're going to talk about food as medicine. And just to give you a little background, my study of nutrition was at University of Michigan and Michigan State University, and Tufts University is where I got my master's degree. And I spent about 20 years as a diabetes educator. I see my other diabetes educator comrade here tonight, because we do have a lot of interplay between diabetes and food intake. So that was a majority of my career as a registered dietitian. So tonight we're going to explore some of the topics under food as medicine. And this really isn't new, because as most of us know, thousands of years ago, Hippocrates was
Quoted as saying, "Let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food."
so that was a long time ago. So like I said, it's not new, but I think it's becoming more of interest of late, which I'm glad to see everyone coming here to learn more about it. So what we're going to talk about is the power of good nutrition. And my standpoint is that you get your nutrition from foods. And the power of good nutrition for maintenance and health of and prevention of disease. And that's the hallmark of what the practice of medicine is for, is to maintain our health and to prevent disease. Now, some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about the benefits of flavonoids, omega-3 fatty acids, pro and prebiotics, the negative effects attributed to ultra-processed foods. Has anybody heard that term lately? The rising cancer rates in younger people and what might be causing that. Additional health concerns regarding sodium. When I was in college, we basically were taught a lot about sodium in reference to blood pressure. But now we know it does have other concerning effects as well. And then also I want to talk about more evidence of a healthy Mediterranean style approach for eating. This slide is in your handout, and it's from Tufts University. And I want to talk first about the left-hand side, where it talks about the disadvantages of eating too few of the foods on the left-hand side, the nuts and seeds, the seafood omega-3 sources, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and polyunsaturated fats. So that's what we're going to talk about first. Sources of flavonoids. I put the picture of berries up because those are really quite high in flavonoids. And flavonoids are a bioactive compound that plant foods have that have a lot of positive effects in our body. And some of the things that have been shown, this is just stuff that we know, it does keep blood vessels healthy. It decreases inflammation, and I'm talking about chronic inflammation, not the inflammation that you get from an acute injury somewhere on the body. We're talking about chronic inflammation, which is very harmful over time. Flavonoids also eliminate carcinogens from the body. They help us excrete carcinogens. They slow the growth of cancer cells, so both of those are positive for preventing cancer. And they also bind to lipids, which help improve our cholesterol levels. Here's some more pictures of sources of flavonoids. And like I said, they're bioactive compounds. But what I want you to notice is they're very colorful. Lots of different colors. And that's, I mean, you don't have to memorize all the names of flavonoids and, you know, write down how much. And some of the apps probably don't show the different flavonoid content. But what you do want to remember is that very, very colorful, deep colors are good sources of flavonoids. Flavonoids are also, several of them are antioxidants. So things like fruits, vegetables, tea, cocoa, which is in dark chocolate, are good sources of the antioxidants. Omega-3 fatty acids, we've got research on that goes back several decades. We do know that omega-3 fatty acids are very helpful to decrease inflammation, so that's helpful for arthritis and fatty liver. Also reduce the risk of heart disease. We've known that for quite a while. But recently, a 2011 study showed that omega-3 fatty acids also decreases the risk of obstructive sleep apnea. It also improves our skin because it manages the production of oils for your skin to keep your skin healthy, and it improves joint and bone health. So omega-3 fatty acids are, again, very, very helpful and something that we should consume regularly. The sources include canola oil, salmon, mackerel, soybeans, navy or kidney beans, walnuts. Years ago, I had a nutrition professor who ate walnuts as a snack every day, and I thought, that's kind of weird. But now, I'm like, no wonder. Tofu, how many people have had tofu? Oh, good, very good. That's a good source of protein. That's also omega-3 fatty acid source. Also eggs. Eggs are another source of omega-3 fatty acids. Another positive I like to start out on the positive side for our food intake. Our probiotics and prebiotics. And so this is a quick facts kind of slide to show you that there's a lot of positive effects of probiotics, and they reduce the risk of heart disease and high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and again, inflammation, which we know is a big problem, and it was a big problem recently with the COVID. A lot of people who had chronic inflammation were at increased risk of severe consequences of COVID. So decreasing inflammation, chronic inflammation in the body is very important. Probiotics also lower bad cholesterol and triglycerides. And some good food sources of probiotics are yogurt and kefir, aged cheeses, those things that you see in the grocery store that are not real cheeses, those would not be.
It has to be the aged
cheeses. Fermented vegetables and things like sauerkraut are good sources, and also miso and tempeh. So those are the probiotic sources. And prebiotics is another area that's under study now. Those are substances that the probiotics use to do all the good stuff they do in the body. So basically, prebiotics are the fuel for the probiotics. And prebiotics are mostly in high fiber carbohydrates. So they stimulate the good bacteria in the body. There was a recent study that I don't have a slide for, but it does have to do with increasing omega-3 fatty acids and probiotics. And it was a cohort study, which is a higher level study when you have two groups that are similar in a lot of ways, and then they just change one thing and study the effects. So that's a cohort study. And just this year, there was a cohort study published that showed substituting plant oils in place of butter decreased overall total mortality by 17%, and that was significant. So that was the one change that they made, and using good sources of omega-3 fatty acids and probiotics. Okay, this definitely is an area that the microbiome is a new area of research. I didn't learn anything about this when I was studying for my degrees. It's a new area of research, but it's showing a lot of potential for our health. And again, in areas of immune regulation, intestinal motility, anti-cancer properties, intestinal permeability, which means how well you're able to absorb nutrients. All of that is being studied right now, and the research continues, including how it affects allergies, diabetes, obesity, irritable bowel syndrome, and even dental caries. They're studying all of those in terms of how the gut microbiome is affecting these problems. Also, in the same line as promoting plant-based foods because of omega-3s and probiotics, there was also some research showing that about 50% of plant-based foods and dairy foods contain a protein that they believe promotes the healthy microbiome. So again, plant-based foods, that's why I've got another slide to show you. If you're not eating a good amount of fiber, that's a problem. And you have to do it stepwise if you're not eating a lot of fiber right now. But the recommendation is at least 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day, of dietary fiber. And it's supposed to be about 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So it is different if you're a larger person, if you're male and you consume 3,000 calories a day, then you'd want 3 times 14 grams a day. So that's what, 42, something like that. So it is different based on the calorie intake, but it's very, very important to get enough fiber from fruits and vegetables. And it fuels the microbiome and it promotes intestinal health. And I should mention, a lot of the things we talk about tonight probably takes a while to have an effect on the body, but your food intake has an effect on your microbiome within about 48 hours. So that's the fastest change that we see in improving your health, is if you're going to work to improve your gut microbiome. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to what are people eating. We're going to take a little bit at intake data. This is a survey from 2021 that interviewed parents regarding children's intake. And during the week preceding the survey, approximately 1 in 3 children did not eat 1 piece of fruit a day. Nearly 1/2 did not eat 1 serving of vegetable a day. So compare that to the recommendation that we eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So we have a lot of children who are not eating anywhere near the number of fruits and vegetables that they should. Also, more than 1/2 drank a sugar-sweetened beverage within that past week, at least once. And that's intake data from the United States. Also, a recent intake data study from the UK showed that half of toddlers' calories were coming from ultra-processed foods. And if you walk around in the grocery store, you'll see these fancy little, bags of things that are called vegetable sticks or something. I don't know what. They throw a little bit of a vegetable in there, and the rest of it is highly processed. But it gives the impression to the parents that they're feeding their child something healthy. So, differences in children's vegetable intake. We have seen that it varies state to state, and the states with the lowest reported vegetable intake also had a lot of times the highest sweetened beverage intake, and they were also in the same areas of the country where we had the highest adult obesity rate, which doesn't really surprise you because the kids are only eating what the parents are providing, right? So again, the food intake data really shows us that we have a lot of work to do to improve food intake in this country. Here's the map showing obesity rates as of 2023, and this is for adults. Some of the highest obesity rates were in Arkansas, Mississippi, and West Virginia, and they had over 40% of the adults considered obese. But Michigan isn't far behind. We have about 35, a little over 35% of our adult population is considered obese. So that's as of 2023. And again, here's the concerns over ultra-processed foods. They're starting to define ultra-processed foods a little bit better so that the research study that's done on those can be more consistent. But basically, they're foods that are formulated with a lot of ingredients that you wouldn't find in your own kitchen. And they have a number of additives such as flavorings, colorings, emulsifiers, a lot of added sugars and fats, and that puts them in the ultra-processed food category. And I have a whole list of what's considered ultra-processed, but different groups are coming up with different lists. So I think that they're going to need to quantify ultra-processed foods and be clear as to what's considered an ultra-processed food so that we can educate people better on that. So it's kind of a new term, but it is definitely getting looked at closely in the research. And they've already shown that there's some differences. What they've been doing lately in research is they put people into different categories based on how much ultra-processed foods they eat, and they've already to show that people with moderate or low intake of ultra-processed foods have healthier outcomes. So it's very early in the stage of studying ultra-processed foods, but I think you'll hear more about it because they are very interested in foods that they might start out healthy and they might even look healthy, but they add so much to it that it really decreases the health factor. And one of the reasons why ultra-processed foods are concerning is we are seeing rising cancer incidence among younger people. And I just picked out two different, from this study that's in the Lancet. I picked out two different types of cancer to show you we are getting very good at treating these cancers, but it'd be nice if people didn't get them in the first place. So unfortunately, we see in the top graph is pancreatic cancer, and you can see the green line showing the rise in pancreatic cancer, and then in leukemia, there's also a rise in the people whose birth is, more recent. So younger people are showing signs of cancer happening earlier and earlier, and the incidence is higher. 17 of the 34 most common cancers are increasing in younger people. So I don't think that any of the research is saying that this is just because we have better ways of diagnosing. So it's not just due to better diagnosis. So something else, probably a lot of other things going on. So one of the things that they are looking at is food processing. This was a study shown in March published in March of 2023, showing that it's a European study. EPIC study is a European prospective investigation into cancer and nutrition. That's the name of the study. And they showed that changes in diet and lifestyle factors could prevent 30 to 50% of cancer cases. So a prospective study is when they're following people over time. So that gives us a lot of good information. So that's another reason why we're concerned about the level of food processing. But unfortunately, when we have to distribute food a long way, you have to have some processing to keep the food safe. That's for sure. But we don't want to over process them. And also, people rely on processed foods when they don't know how to cook. And fewer people know how to cook nowadays. So they do rely on more highly processed foods that just need to be reheated. Okay, here's not so good. I guess I'm going into the not so good news now. All right, it used to be the recommendation for alcohol was up to 1 drink a day for women, 2 drinks a day for men. And that was in the dietary guidelines. But earlier this year, the Surgeon General came out with the promotion of having cancer warning labels for alcohol. So it's getting to look like consuming even a moderate amount of alcohol is associated with a higher risk, especially of female breast cancer, compared to never consuming alcohol. It's also, they also concluded that higher amounts of alcohol consumption also results in higher risk of several other cancers. So at least 7 types of cancer, including the mouth, the throat, esophagus, breast, liver, colon and rectum cancers, and those are all increasing. Your risk increases with any alcohol intake, and it increases more with higher intake. Colon and rectum cancers, those are the second leading cause of cancer for women and the third leading cause of cancer for men. So we really do have to look closely at what is causing the rate of cancers that we're seeing now. Also, alcohol is considered the third leading modifiable risk factor after smoking and excess weight. So alcohol intake is considered the third factor that will do the most to help reduce your risk of cancer. So you may see, I haven't delved all the way through the new dietary guidelines. It's quite a lengthy publication, but I did not see anywhere that they had come out with the warning that the Surgeon General came out with. But as you can see in the top, 3 to 6 standard drinks per week implies a moderate risk, especially cancers of breast and colon. And then 7 or more drinks per week, your risk of heart disease and stroke increases, and it radically increases with each additional drink. So sorry to give you the bad news, but it's not looking as good as it used to have a drink every day. Possible causes of the significant change in cancer incidence. There's a lot of different things that people, the researchers have pointed to. Number one, like we talked about, there's a lot of obesity in the country. We see altered microbiomes that are not as healthy as we'd like to see them. Sedentary lifestyles. A lot of people have a job that requires them to sit at a computer for lengthy amounts of time. We also know more about environmental pollutants and carcinogens, and then we just talked about the alcohol intake. So these are all possible causes of the fact that we're seeing cancers increase. In addition to cancers, a plant-based dietary pattern also decreases the risk of type 2 diabetes. So a recent care study did show that when people consume minimally processed food and they have good fiber and probiotics and your omega-3s, that definitely had a decreased risk of type 2 diabetes, which we have seen is on the rise in this country. Okay, now I want to turn to the same slide again and look at the foods that we are consuming too much of, or components of food. So they estimate that over 66,000 deaths occur from excess sodium intake, and also another 57,000, over 57,000 from processed meats. And then sugary beverages. You've seen how big the cups are getting now. They don't even fit in the little things in your car. Hopefully they're drinking non-sugar vegetable or beverages in those huge cups, but sugary beverages are definitely a problem. And then even unprocessed red meats. So these are all reasons that half of all US deaths from heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes each year are occurring. So we do need to work on improving our diet, and sodium is one of the main things. As you can see, this is from the Healthy Claim info that is in one of your handouts. So we do have a lot of people that consume more added sugars than are recommended, and 77% more saturated fat, because we're a big meat-eating country, and that's where a lot of saturated fat comes in. But also coconut oil, palm oil. There was a time just not too long ago when you noticed a different configuration of the nutrition facts label for a lot of products, because they wanted to shift away from palm oil and palm kernel oil, because it made their saturated fat intake look too high, and people were looking at the saturated fat intake of the foods that they were buying. Unfortunately, when they switched from a saturated oil or a saturated like coconut oil or palm oil, the shelf life decreases. So you do have to be careful when you're buying products that have removed all the saturated fat and they're using just polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, because they won't last as long. They will go rancid sooner. But in terms of what we're eating too much of, 90% of people eat more sodium than is recommended. So that's a good first place to start if you don't know where you should try to improve your food intake. We do need limits on sodium. The average intake is over 50% more than what's recommended, and what's recommended is only about 1 teaspoon of salt. So 2,300 milligrams of sodium is about 1 teaspoon of salt. As I said, when I was in college, we basically were learning about this
In terms of blood pressure,
but now we know that excess
sodium is stored in soft
tissues, and so they contribute to problems with diabetes, kidney disease, multiple sclerosis, hypertension, and even muscle function. And water follows sodium, so excess sodium intake means that there's going to be more fluid kept in the body, and that increases the strain on the heart, and
that can contribute to
congestive heart failure and left ventricle hypertrophy. And what we learned recently is we used to think that certain people were more sensitive to sodium, and there probably are people more sensitive to sodium in terms of their blood pressure, but a high amount of sodium in the diet can cause problems even if you're not sodium sensitive. So that is a different shift from when I was in college 40 years ago. And a lot of people, they're not trusting science so much because of the fact, I heard one guy say, well, they're always changing their minds. They're not always changing their minds, but we do change our mind based on the bulk of the evidence. And we do know more now than we knew earlier when I was in college about what sodium does in the body, and also about a lot of other components of our food. So we do have the nutrition facts label. We've had that for, probably 35 years, I think it came out. And so it's something that you can focus on if you want to try to reduce your sodium intake. But first of all, whenever possible, eat fresh foods. Those don't necessarily come with the nutrition facts label, but they are low in sodium. So fresh fruits and vegetables are all low in sodium. Frozen foods, for the most part, are also low in sodium. And if you try to flavor your foods with something other than a salt-containing product. That will help. Try to use more herbs and spices of any kind, cumin and chili powder and, you know, whatever kind you want to think of. Experiment with those and give other flavors to your food besides salt. Salt is a flavor enhancer and something that helps preserve food. So it's used definitely a lot in food production. So the nutrition facts label can help you. The FDA has just recently proposed new labels, front of package labels,
Which they have in several
other
other,
countries. We don't have it here yet, but, and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that this is going to happen anytime soon. But this is what the FDA proposed so that you could easily see from the front of the package if something was high in any of these three items that are definitely
things that
we
we
want to pay
saturated fat, sodium.
and added sugars. So the FDA has proposed this, but as one nutritionist, Marion Nessel, always says, as soon as you tell people to eat less of something, that's bad for business. So I don't know where this is going to go. I think it would be helpful because I got caught recently. I thought I picked the sauce that had less sodium in it. The one on the left says sodium 460 milligrams, and I took that off the shelf without paying enough attention to. It used to be they had consistent portion sizes in the same food, but apparently they don't have to do that anymore because these are both sauces for stir fries. And one of them says the serving size is 1 tablespoon, and the other one says 1/4 of a cup. So I can tell why the one on the left changed it to a tablespoon because that made their sodium content look better. But when you multiply that by 4, I should have chosen the one on the right. So unfortunately, the nutrition facts labels, when they first came out, I remember we were going over what the portion sizes should be for a lot of these different products. And I thought they were going to be consistent. And for a while they weren't, but apparently that's not in the law because this is happening. A lot of what we talked about so far is trying to prevent illnesses, but food also is a very integral part of the treatment of a number of different diseases. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes for all of us diabetes educators in the group. We definitely focused on carbohydrate intake, and for type 2, controlled carbohydrate intake and control of the total energy intake was critical for controlling diabetes. Also, a couple other examples: irritable bowel syndrome. That's very, very personal. Different foods trigger different people, so it really has to be individualized for irritable bowel syndrome. And then there's gluten-sensitive enteropathy. A lot of you have probably all seen the no gluten or gluten-free. They came out with gluten-free on all kinds of products that never had gluten in it, but they thought that would look nice to put gluten-free on it. So they can put gluten-free on it, even if it never had gluten in it in the first place. But some people are sensitive to the protein gluten. Now, for a while, that was a very popular diet to follow, even if you weren't diagnosed with gluten-sensitive enteropathy, also known as celiac disease. And one of the reasons why it was so popular is because people were losing weight on it. Because if you didn't know whether it had gluten in it or not, you didn't eat it. And so people lost weight on it. But that wasn't really meant to be a weight loss diet. It started out to be specifically for gluten-sensitive enteropathy. Okay, I mentioned a couple of things that lead us for misinformation. The food companies can mislead us. Remember, they're trying to sell you a product. So you really have to be a good consumer to know whether or not they're pulling your leg. So you have to do the buyer beware thing and pay close attention. But there are some red flag warnings, and one of the handouts that I gave you was spotting bad science. Again, when it comes to nutrition, we're looking at the big picture and the bulk of the research. And you can criticize research based on what kind of sample size they have and things like that, and how they performed their study. But some red flag warnings for you is to remember that there's very few things that really promise a quick fix when it comes to your overall health. And claims that sound too good to be true probably are, especially when it comes to food intake. I've heard so many stories about, oh, you just eat this food and it'll cure this or whatever, make you look 10 years younger, whatever. It's probably not true. Sometimes they do real simplistic conclusions from a complex study, and that's not too good either. We also don't want to see recommendations made from just a single study. So we're really looking at the bulk of the research that's been published and peer-reviewed to date. I hate to see lists of good and bad foods. We talked about dark chocolate before we started. Some people would say every chocolate is bad. I can tell you good things about chocolate, especially dark chocolate. So I don't like to see lists of foods that say this is good and this is bad. There are some foods that we should consume very infrequently and in smaller quantities. That's true. But if you were starving, I would not tell you not to eat a particular food. You know, food is primarily energy for our bodies, and it's got to, you know, the body's got to have fuel to do any of its processes and to create new cells. So if someone needs calories, they need to eat whatever. So I tend to stay away from lists of good and bad foods. I do want to mention also, this is a big, big industry, the supplement industry. My approach is still you should be getting your nutrients from foods. And since 1994, the supplement industry has not had to prove safety or efficacy for any of their products. And this was passed back in 1994. I'll never forget it. Because it was not, I don't think, not good for consumers. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they don't have to prove things are safe or effective for what they claim the product does. And this is a recent article that came out in the Michigan Medicine newsletter last year, talking about how many people take supplements that may be toxic to their liver. And so that's not good news. And you combine that with the medications that are commonly taken. NSAIDs are for, pain relief. Simvastatin, that's one of the major statins that's prescribed. And then sertraline is the term for, it's an antidepressant. So if you combine people who are taking those kind of medications with them taking any of these that are supplements readily available over the counter and also potentially toxic to the liver. So this is why you always need to tell your physician what you're taking, even if it's an over-the-counter product. And you go into any store, any pharmacy, and you'll see that big, several aisles of all kinds of supplements. So please be careful with those. Again, I'm trying to encourage people to choose foods first to get your nutrients, because they do have a package They have a lot of other substances in them. And this is a quote I took from the associate professor at Harvard Medical School, that healthy people should not feel compelled to add a multivitamin or other supplement to their diet to stay healthy. Now, there are some groups that need to take a supplement, specifically pregnant women. They need supplements to make sure they get enough folate. And there's a couple other groups that might need a supplement, but that's a specific need for a supplement. I've heard this term too, that Americans have the most expensive urine because we're excreting a lot of the supplements that we take. So, okay, now I want to go a little bit more globally. This is information on the Mediterranean diet. Like I said, what we like to do is look at the bulk of information that we've obtained over time. And this 7-country study was one that we were always taught about 40 years ago when I was in college. And it was Ansel Keys, and his research for the 7-country study started in the 1950s, but it started to be publicized in the 1960s, and that ended up getting him on the Time magazine cover. They noticed the reason why they started this 7-country study is they noticed that men in the United States were dying a lot earlier of heart attacks than men in other countries. So the 7 countries that were studied was the United States and Finland, the Netherlands, Greece, Italy, the former Yugoslavia, and Japan. And they did determine that it had a lot to do with diet as well as lifestyle. So that was way back in the 60s, and I learned about it in the 70s. And now we see it still being a major part of the research when they look at the evidence for a Mediterranean-style diet. So all these decades later, we're still seeing studies being done on this kind of food intake, and they're all showing benefits. So a Mediterranean diet includes things like olive oil, nuts, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, fish and seafood, limited dairy and poultry, some red wine. That's why red wine is a little bit different category than all the alcohol. It does contain resveratrol, which is a healthy antioxidant, but that doesn't mean you'd want to drink huge quantities either, just a little bit. And very infrequent red meat. And all of these that I listed here underneath that picture, those are all studies done more recently, and they were, some of them specifically on women because the 7-country study focused on men. We have more studies recently that continue to show positive results from people consuming a Mediterranean type diet. There was even one on pregnant women, and it showed that the women, and what they do is they don't change their diet, they just evaluate their diet and put it in a category like, yes, it follows the Mediterranean diet, or it moderately follows the Mediterranean diet, or they very limitedly follow the Mediterranean diet. So they usually put them in 3 categories, and then they look at the health outcomes. And for the pregnant women, it showed a significant reduction in any adverse pregnancy outcome for the women who were closer to the Mediterranean diet. So a lot of recent research has shown the same benefits of a Mediterranean diet. And also, has anybody heard of the blue zones? That's kind of like a continuation of the 7-country study and the Mediterranean diet. This is a term that was coined by a guy that worked for National Geographic, and he noticed some areas, he traveled all over the world, and he noticed some areas where people seem to be aging quite more healthily. And as you can see, several of them are part of the 7-country study: Italy, Greece, Japan. Interestingly, the only area that they looked at in the United States is Loma Linda. And does everybody know what's in Loma Linda? Loma Linda University is Seventh-day Adventist, and they are vegetarian. So that's the one area of the country that they looked at for healthy aging, so of our country. But again, this is, it's kind of like a continuation of the 7-country study, and it's showing, it's not just looking at diet though, but it's reporting on regions of the world where people do seem to age very, very well, and they have a high longevity. It did expand past the food intake to look at activity levels and community connections and the person's positive outlook. So all of that contributed to their longevity as well. Okay. Now, a couple tips and takeaways I'm hoping that you'll remember is, number one, we're supposed to enjoy our food. So I don't want, I mean, I told you some negative stuff, but hopefully I told you enough positive stuff that you will enjoy your food. And anytime you're eating berries or something with probiotics or, you know, omega-3s, just think about how that is positively affecting your health, because it is. So enjoy it and try to focus on the fact that a lot of the things in our foods that we choose to eat are good for us. Consider your own health situation. If you have family members that have a certain tendency towards, you know, cancer or heart disease or, you know, high blood pressure, those are things, you know, a lot of those have genetic factors in them as well. So if you have family members that have that or yourself have been diagnosed with that, that's what you want to focus on first. So your own health situation is important to consider when you choose how you want to improve your food intake. Also, remember that it just takes small little changes to really make a difference. Because how many things do you do as often as eat? Besides maybe watch TV. No. Most people eat 3 or more times a day, and I'm hoping that you eat that often, because we could talk about how bad it is to not eat all day and then eat a lot all at once. But there's very few things we do as often as eat. And so when you make some changes in your food choices, that really can make an impact and help your health. And also, there's not very many foods that you have to say you could never eat, but there are a good number of foods, especially as Americans, we really need to eat less often or in smaller quantities. So everyone's talking about the cost of food now. Well, let's decrease our quantities on some of these foods and the food will last longer. All right. Also, I want you to remember to try to make your meal colorful. Any natural, colorful foods that you add to your plate is going to improve the health of your meal. So, some easy techniques for improving your food choices. I try to tell people to remember to take 5. That's 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. It's supposed to be 2 of fruit and 3 of vegetables, but I don't care. If you're eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, that would be tremendous. I think it's a good idea for people to keep a food diary for at least 1 weekday and 1 weekend day, and just to see what you're doing. And again, there's very many things we do as often as eat. So do you actually know everything that you eat? What you put into your mouth? That can show you a lot. You can comparison shop for food items, and always remember to look at that portion size. Limit your alcohol intake, and especially for people who are at risk of breast, colorectal, or cancers. Those are definitely ones that you want to limit alcohol intake. If you have specific dietary needs, anybody who wants to give me their email address, I can send you my list of registered dietitian nutritionists that have their own websites, and they counsel remotely, and it's great. It's past my abilities. I don't do that anymore. But I do want to recommend that if you have specific dietary needs, there are very easy ways, and some insurances cover it. There are ways for you to connect with a registered dietitian nutritionist, and they can consult with you remotely. So these are all Michigan dietitians, and I have quite a list. They have their own website, and they're very impressive. So if anyone's interested in that, I can definitely email that to you. Even the researchers at Harvard, when they're talking about keeping your mind healthy, what's the first thing that they tell people to do? Eat a plant-based diet. So a lot of different research groups and medical groups are coming around to the idea that we do need to eat more plants, and especially the healthy plants, not necessarily French fries all the time. I know that's from a plant, but it's not the most healthy. And of course, the other steps too, in exercise and sleep and manage stress, nurture your social contact, and challenge your brain, which is what you're doing tonight, right? Challenging your brain. So, so the food is medicine pyramid. This is becoming more and more popular and more of an emphasis in our healthcare system. The 2022 White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health recommended that we pay more attention to the food as medicine approach. And so they even recommended that more physicians in their training get food as medicine type training and learn more about nutrition. So we're basically just talking about prevention, mostly prevention. But all of these different steps leading up to things like medically tailored groceries, medically tailored meals. Produce prescription programs are already in place for a lot of Medicare Advantage programs. So they do reimburse for produce. But I do think that this movement towards food as medicine is going to continue, especially when there are steps that you can take that might reduce your use of medications that are very, very expensive. So the estimates are that if we continue to move towards food as medicine approach, that we could save a lot of money in terms of our overall health care. And that's my talk. So if anybody has any questions, and I'll see if I can answer them. You got a question?
Yes, I just wondered how well we could follow a Mediterranean diet if you don't eat anything that lives in water.
You don't eat any fish?
Yeah.
Okay, then I would focus on other sources of omega-3 fatty acids.
But you couldn't really do a Mediterranean diet.
Well, it wouldn't be 100% Mediterranean diet, but if you limited your red meat intake and you focused more on, and there's plenty of protein sources in the plant kingdom. So, you know, tofu and you know, very.
I don't have tofu, I don't even know what to do with it.
Well, there's lots of recipes for what to do with it. Tofu has very little taste, and so you season it a lot, and it picks up the flavors of other foods. And so it's very common in Asian cooking, but there's a lot of things that you can do with tofu. So, and that's one of the things that I think is coming more common now. I used to do cooking classes way back in years ago, but now you can probably find YouTube videos to help you learn how to make just about anything. So I would give that a try. But I would just look for other sources of omega-3s and using plant-based oils like olive oil or canola oil in place of solid fats like butter. Mm-hmm.
Are there reliable tests of gut microbiome health? And are those available to just everyday people?
It's too early. Yeah. Yeah, they don't do that too much yet, except for in the research. Mm-hmm.
I'm a retired dentist who practiced for 56 years. I retired in 2020. I wonder if you or the library people would like me to say something about the political football that fluoride in the water has become.
Well, that might be for another talk.
Okay.
But you can talk to Tom. You can talk to Tom about that.
How much does cooking degrade the nutritional content of fruits and vegetables and things like sauerkraut and the benefits that they give us?
That will reduce the fiber content a little bit, and there are some more volatile nutrients that would be reduced a little bit, but it's kind of a trade-off because cooking often makes food more palatable, and so I mean the number one thing is to get it in, so you don't have to eat everything raw, but overcooking it is not a good idea. I grew up on asparagus that was overcooked. Never liked it, but now I like it. So. Mm-hmm.
Northern Michigan, do you have any information concerning like venison, bear, elk meat?
Yes, those are lean meats. Venison does have a good amount of cholesterol in it, but it is lower in fat than most red meats. I'd have to look up more information on bear and what was the other one you asked about? Elk. Elk is pretty similar to venison. I'll ask my hunter husband here. He's had, I mean, I just know that you should never eat, what was that other one? Caribou. Don't eat caribou. It's terrible. But it does have a little, wild game has a little bit higher cholesterol level, but they're leaner. So.
And then my second question is, when we were growing up with the food pyramid, Dairy Grill was included. Is it still included?
Dairy?
Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen was included on the food pyramid? Well, the new healthy label, then Dairy Queen's not going to make it on. Yeah, things have changed. But you have to remember too, and like I showed you, the front of package label, and I would love to happen, but in this country, I'm not sure we're ever going to see that happen because the food companies are probably not that happy with that front of package label. But I would be happy to see it if it happens. Yeah. Well, they don't like to be made to do things. They obviously didn't keep the same portion size on all the stuff.
Why are Lay's potato chips ultra processed? It's just potatoes, salt, and some oil.
Why are they ultra processed?
Yeah, it's on your screen.
Well, because again, that's a term that they're starting to define. And I think that because of the quantity, potatoes do absorb a lot of fat. You can saute a number of different vegetables and they don't soak up. Have you ever noticed that? You still got a good amount of oil in your pan. Not with potatoes. They soak up so much oil that it's the total fat content that I think that they're opposed to in terms of processing. I know. I didn't say you could never have them, but just, you know, the amount is important. Mhm.
Is there a medical definition of infrequently? Like how infrequent is infrequent when you're eating something unhealthy?
That's a good question.
Depends how much you like it.
I think that infrequent would be just a couple times a week, you know, because you know, when you multiply, you know, we eat 3 times a day, hopefully. A couple times a week would be infrequent.
I guess it depends on what it is.
Yes, and the portion size. Yeah. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Just curious on the, trying to do the plant-based diet, do you have input on GMO, non-GMO, in terms of preference, not preference, organic, non-organic, pesticides, insecticides, all that stuff that sometimes comes with them?
Well, my opinion on GMO is, and that's genetically modified. I think that worldwide, there's enough problems with famine and things like that, that I can see why some genetically modified products are being made and plants are being genetically modified so that we don't have as much waste. We do have a problem worldwide with famine, and it's more due to access. But that's why I always say if somebody's starving, I don't care what it has in it, we got to get them some food. Well, I do care what it has in it, but that's my approach with the genetically modified. With organic versus non-organic, I myself do not often pay for the extra for organic. I wash off, you know, everything that, and I would prefer to buy from places that minimally use any of those pesticides and things like that. But organic, if it's labeled organic, there are probably other foods that are similar to it that come close to that, but aren't labeled organic. So there is a little bit of difference, but did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kinda. Uh-huh.
What's your opinion of artificial sweeteners for people who are trying to control type 2 diabetes?
Well, artificial sweeteners in reasonable quantities are not a problem. They're pretty well, actually, that would have to be one of the substances that is probably better researched than most other food ingredients. And so it's not going to cause too much of a problem, I don't think. In fact, there's some studies that show in place of a sugar sweetened beverage, if you substitute an artificially sweetened beverage, they've shown a decreased cancer risk. So those are some recent studies that have come out. And we don't know why that is. Is that because in place of a sugar sweetened beverage, the person loses weight and maybe that decreases their cancer risk? It might not be the actual sugar, it might be overconsumption of calories that is the problem. Because you got to remember that sugar sweetened beverages are consumed in large quantities in this country, and a beverage is something that does not make you feel full. So you can take in a lot of calories in a beverage. So,
Another factor with the artificial sugars is there's a big difference between naturally plant-based artificial sweeteners.
Yep, we have some of those. Yep. So there are some more natural-based artificial sweeteners that they've come out with recently.
We want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and thank you, Eileen, for opening our before you leave, if you did not get a set of the handouts that Eileen brought with her tonight, please stop by the front table. And I would also remind you that this program, among many others, is brought to you by the Friends of the Charlevoix Public Library. And that group helps to bring us programs that are not within the budget of the library and the taxpayer support that you provide. And if you'd like to help support the Friends of the Library, on the round table up here are some membership information that you could consider. But we thank you for those of you that are our friends and encourage the others to consider it. And more program is coming, so watch for your library link newsletter and the website, and I think social media, you'll find lists of our programs as well. But thank you all for coming.
If anyone wants this via email, give me your email.
I need control.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.